D-backs fans are calling it the greatest comeback arc in baseball history. The key arm in the bullpen who went from the worst disappointment in franchise history to a perfect ERA. We're talking Shelby Miller and the series win against the Mets right now on the T-Backs podcast.
Perdomo makes the play.
And a high fly ball. No doubt about this. Home run Marte.
They're going to send the ball all the way around. Corbin Carroll with it inside the park. Answer back.
I'm Ivan Melendez.
Luis Gonzalez.
I'm Tori Lavello, and you're listening to the T-Backs Podcast.
T-Backs Podcast.
T-Backs Podcast.
Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the T-Backs Podcast, where we bring you all the hottest Arizona Diamondbacks tea and talk from across the pond here in London. We are proud to be Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast. And we're in a good mood this evening because the D-backs have just closed out their first win at Citi Field, home of the New York Mets, since 2017, and it's largely thanks to one man who was, if you'll remember, part of what most people call the worst trade in franchise history. Goldschmidt Happens has called him the most hated D-back of the last decade, and yet he's stepping up after being a guest invitee to spring training. Now he's closing out games in the hardest place to win in the major leagues. It's Shelby Miller, everybody. That pause was for applause, so, you better be clapping, listeners. But, not unless you're driving or anything. Stay safe. But before we dive into the main story of the episode, here's your series recap. Game 1 at the Mets. According to Dalton Feely, Eduardo Rodriguez is the best-worst pitcher of all time. He's randomly hot and cold for no reason. Tori Lavello moved Lourdes up to the cleanup spot while batting 174. Put Jorge Barossa in instead of Alec Thomas when Alec's record is stronger against the pitching matchup, and dropped the best leadoff hitter in baseball down the order. That led to a bad defeat against probably the best team in baseball at home right now. Turned what MLB Europe says is the best defensive inning of all time at the top of the fourth, and it's fitting that would come against us, and we lost Game 1 in fairly ignominious fashion. Let's move on. Wednesday, Game 2, saw Corbin Burnes finally get their first win of the season in a Diamondbacks uniform, and despite the odds being stacked against him, with the D-backs 1 for 6 going into the game and 4-18 at Citi Field, Mark Vientos got the better of Burnes in the third, and the Diamondbacks didn't answer back until the seventh, when Geraldo Perdomo blooped in 2 runs, and Kevin Ginkel came in to escape the jam on his return from injury. Ultimately, Burnes had a solid start, not lights out. He left a lot of runners on base, but did a great job to only trail 1-0 going into the fifth, where some danger loomed. 2 sac flies in the eighth from Barossa and Perdomo built up the Diamondbacks' lead, and despite Justin Martinez coming in and giving up a couple of runs, and concerningly having an even lower velocity than last time out, there's a big red flag there, Tori Lavello attributed this to fatigue, and there have been no scans yet, because J-Mart hasn't reported any pain. But they have taken a look after 102 miles an hour fastball average dropped to just over 97 miles an hour, and surprise, surprise, J-Mart shortly after placed on the 15-day injury list with right shoulder inflammation, which is bad news all round and bad vibes, and we don't like that. It was Ryan Thompson who relieved him in the ninth. It's a rare scenario where you have to go in and take out your closer in a baseball game, but that's what we had to do. And yeah, Ryan Thompson, who had a pretty rough year so far this year, and the only guy I know who owns a Byung-Hyun Kim jersey, but he secured the win and his first save of the year, and that's pretty impressive when you consider that he did it with the bases loaded. It was Geraldo Perdomo who was voted player of the game on what had originally supposed to have been an off day for him, having played every game this year, so Tori Lavello did a Tori Lavello and insisted on getting at-bats for Garrett Hampson instead, while Justin Lawler continues to do his thing in Reno. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, but how much longer can this go on? Either way, it was career with number 600 for the skipper, and so questionable lineup, rests, and call-up decisions aside, congratulations, Tori. That's no small achievement. And I think a lot of the people who've defended him this year are right that actually we would be in a much worse position this year without him. However, I'm British, so I'm going to find something to complain about, and there's plenty of ammunition floating out there, so, Garrett Hampson, that's something I want to complain about. But not because he's necessarily bad, he's not fantastic, but he's not, like, the worst player we've ever seen on this Diamondbacks team, not by a long shot. Some people would say that was Shelby Miller, and we're about to prove you why otherwise. But the news has broken from Jack Summers, who obviously writes for Diamondbacks on Sports Illustrated, that probably today was the last day we're going to see Tim Tower in the majors for the Diamondbacks with the looming return of Ketel Marte in Philly. Whoop, whoop. But if they're going to keep somebody on the roster, it's going to be Garrett Hampson because he can play shortstop and Tim Tower isn't expected to. And frankly, I think that is ridiculous, especially after I've committed to getting the jersey. Diamondbacks front office, Torey Lovullo, what are you doing? Tim Tower, like, why? Just why? And he had another great game today. He's a guy who can always randomly generate some power from low down in the order. I don't see Garrett Hampson doing that. I have no idea what Garrett Hampson's numbers are for the year, but I'm sure they're not going to be compared to what Tim Tower has going on. Let's pull up Garrett Hampson's numbers for the year here. Yeah, Arizona 2025 season, 185 batting average, no home runs, no RBIs, 5 hits in all plate appearances. Yeah, and then now we've got a guy, Tim Tower. I'm pretty sure that's 5 home runs for the year now. So why on earth is that the option that we're expecting to see happen with the roster moves? It's crazy. You would rather just have a bit of shuffling around. Here's the thing. If you need somebody who plays backup shortstop and you want to drop somebody down to Reno, send Hampson down. And then, Jordan Lawler is right there. Literally, he's doing everything in Reno perfectly right now. You could not lay a finger on him if you tried. And yet it's Garrett Hampson who's getting the reps. I've no hate against the guy personally. I know he's got experience. He's an ex-Rocky, an ex-Marlin, an ex-Kansas City Royal. And I know he's a bit older. He's 30 now, I believe. But ultimately, the guy's from Reno. Send him home. Let him relax. Don't make us have to suffer random Garrett Hampson starts for no reason every single random game. Anyway, I digress. Let's talk Game 3. Game 3 against the Mets in the series was the rarest of things. And no, I'm not talking about a win. I'm talking about a UK-friendly start time of just past 6 p.m., which is lovely. I loaded up the pub grub, and I enjoyed baseball that wasn't starting at the dead of night with an absolute headliner pitching matchup. Kodai Senga against Zach Gallen. Senga managed to escape a bases-loaded jam, striking out Pavin Smith a little too easy in the third, while Zach Gallen was battling not just the Mets, but the home plate umpire as well, whose strike zone for the Diamondbacks pitcher was conspicuously smaller than what he was calling for Diamondbacks batters. And that's before he let Juan Soto call time with Gallen halfway through his windup with 2 outs and 2 strikes in the bottom of the third and then ultimately ending in a walk. I've never seen anything like that in the 4 years I've been watching baseball. Like, if that was anybody else, I'm sure there would be a fandom screaming. Like, imagine if that was happening with a high stakes matchup, like Juan Soto's facing off against like Paul Skeens or somebody, golden boy of Major League Baseball. Skeens gets most of the way through his windup and basically at the point where he's getting his arm up to release the ball, the batter calls time and is allowed to step out the box and isn't punished for it. It was ridiculous, and I'm pretty sure Torey Lovullo, if that had been a bit later in the game, would have been out there giving the home plate umpire a piece of his mind because they didn't have a great day behind the plate. But ultimately, it didn't matter. Alek Thomas batted in the first score of the game to bring Gino Suarez in. The Diamondbacks did leave them loaded, however. Corbin came within about a foot of a grand slam off of a full count. He just couldn't drive it over the head of Brandon Nimmo in left field at the top of the fourth. But it was still a strong fourth inning. Zach Gallen, vintage milkman performance to go 1-2-3. His battle with Kodai Senga was over pretty quickly, though. The Japanese was through just under 100 pitches in 4 innings and got the hook for Genesis Cabrera to make his Mets debut starting in the 5th. The almost home runs, we're going to call them that, continued with Josh Naylor coming even closer with a ball coming off what we in Britain would call a very tippy-topper's edge of the Mets outfield wall. And it was so close that the umpires had to review themselves to figure out how and why the balls didn't get out and instead bounced back into play. And you know how we were saying, the umps clearly had something against the Diamondbacks. That was another example of that. In 27 of 30 ballparks, that's a clear home run. In the other 3, it's probably a home run because ultimately it's hit the top of the wall and come back into play. And I'm pretty sure if you go to the letter of the law interpretations and what is and is not constituting a home run, hitting like the area of the wall and the padding that is up there in the outfield, I'm pretty sure that counts as when it makes contact with that area. It's a home run because the ball didn't hit the side of the wall. The ball hit the flat top area and only really came back onto the field because the center fielder Trace Thompson, who had made a jump towards the ball, had kind of hit the pad and it curved the pad back in onto the field a little bit, and the impact had adjusted that. It was very unlucky either way that Josh Naylor didn't have himself a home run off of that one, but the call was ultimately confirmed as a double, which spelled the end of Cabrera's day in pitching. But the inning wasn't a complete waste, though, because Gino Suarez's sac fly brought in Pavin Smith, who had led off the inning with a walk, so we at least had another run in there. We'll take it. Zach Gallen retired the side again, 1-2-3 in the fifth inning. Do you remember when we said after he had that win in the series against the Yankees that he had auditioned for the Yankees on the road there? It was kind of starting to feel very similar on this game as well, and something about New York obviously is clearly working for Zach Gallen right now. Obviously, he's a New Jersey native. He's free agent at the end of this year, so he's put in some good performances in teams that, yeah, of course he wants to go and play for. They're probably bigger market teams with more chance of a World Series ring than we do, but it still kind of sucks to see that. Anyway, it was a pretty amazing performance, at least until Juan Soto got a hold of one, bottom of the sixth. It pulled a run back, and it changed the atmosphere a lot. You started to get that sinking feeling in your gut that, it's going to be another one of those days where the Diamondbacks are pretty good, just not good enough. Zach, however, did well to recover. He struck out Pete Alonso before getting Vientos to ground out fairly easily. But then the answerbacks went full snakes alive mode. Geraldo Perdomo got a hanging breaking ball, cleared the fence in right field, got that run right back. And then in came Ryan Thompson from the bullpen in the seventh inning, got another big 3 outs after a Houdini act coming in for J-Mart. Yesterday, he didn't really have to do too much escapology. Today, got the big 3 outs. Problem solved. Kevin Ginkel came in, challenged to take the eighth, which really was a tough ask to go back-to-back after coming off the IL and starting in his first game since he returned from the injury stint and faced Juan Soto. Yeah, you had that feeling that something was coming, that gut punch, and come it did with another homer. It was right over Lourdes's head in center left field. But 34 pitches later and an absolutely teeth-grinding at-bat, the Ginkelman ran up Nimmo, escaped the top of the eighth, and the slim Diamondbacks lead was still intact by 1 run. But that lead grew a little bit more as Tim Tower led off the ninth with true answerbacks fashion once again, a big insurance home run, desperately needed. And then, without Justin Martinez and AJ Puck, it was Shelby Miller handed the rock with the save on the line, and he got the first 2 outs on just 3 pitches before Perdomo hustled for the final out. And the D-backs got their first series victory at Citi Field since 2017 with an outstanding Zach Gallen performance backed up by solid run support from the offense and the beleaguered bullpen saved by what we're going to say is a zero-to-hero story arc of Shelby Miller. And that's our main talking point for the rest of the show. We've had a couple of jokes about who won the trade when the Diamondbacks and the Cubs have faced off so far this year. Cubs have been a bit of a bogey team for the Diamondbacks, but in terms of individual battles, Shelby Miller has struck out or got the guy to fly out multiple times. The guy he was traded for was, of course, Dansby Swanson, all-star, number 1 pick. And yeah, that was a mega hated move when it went down. I know people on the Diamondbacks social media and on the forums who still complain about it in 2024, 2025, but honestly, I reckon between you and me, they're very quiet right now. Shelby didn't even make it really as a starter when we first acquired him. We acquired him based on a record of 6-17. There were flashes of brilliance there, but most people saw it and was like, well, why the heck are we trading our number one draft pick for this guy? And then this year, Shelby Miller, not a name we expected to make the roster. He was obviously a non-roster invitee coming into spring training, but he's in command of an absolutely devastating fastball and splitter combo. He absolutely destroyed the strike zone today. He was so confident and aggressive with hitters he faces. He was unafraid of the high leverage moments, and to date, he has not allowed an earned run. And I know Tori's like, yeah, I'm not going to name a closer. I think there's not really another candidate in that bullpen right now. I think Kevin Ginkel was expected to fill in there sometimes, but I'm pretty sure the closer jobs is Shelby Miller's to lose now against righties or lefties. Those of you who know stats on social media will know of Thomas Nestico, goes by @TJ_Stats, and he had some interesting thoughts on Shelby Miller. And are we about to seriously discuss if he has the fastball in the game of baseball? Yes, we absolutely are. I quote, "A combination of velocity, extension, and ride relative to his slot gives him the foundation to dominate, with a tendency to elevate, giving it elite status." End quote. Now, that's quite a lot of words to say Shelby Miller gets strikeouts and knows how to do it consistently. And in a bullpen that's been injured, stretched to death, beat up, ignored, and selected through what we can only assume is Torey Lovullo's Russian roulette wheel, Shelby Miller has been exactly what we need. He's now one of 4 relievers in the league to toss 10 innings, not allow an earned run, and record 15 strikeouts. Now, if this was 1981, those kinds of numbers would, and has previously, win you a Cy Young Award. And yes, I did just compare them with Rollie Fingers. Baseball dads, please don't come for me. Last year, one of the things I said on this show when it comes to Diamondbacks pitchers was we absolutely needed people who are confident in themselves, and it doesn't matter what batter they're facing, are going to go up and challenge a team's offense, regardless of the location, regardless of the conditions, regardless of lefty versus righty, regardless of somebody's hitting record and their batting average, any of those numbers. Shelby Miller is that guy. Shelby Miller goes after batters, and I know there'll always be some people going, well, actually, the save he earned today was against the bottom third of the Mets lineup, and it wasn't Juan Soto, and it wasn't Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso that he faced, but ultimately, it doesn't bloomin' matter. He struck out the 3 guys he was facing, and he got the save. I don't care whether or not it was against the bottom of the order, whether or not it was against a double-A team, whether or not it was against somebody's little league team from, middle of nowhere county, Oregon. It doesn't matter. If you are a closer and you come into a game and you get the save and the team wins the game, and especially wins the game in a super tricky environment where they've historically struggled, and the home team in that stadium are something ridiculous like 18-1 at home so far in the year, and you get the win, I don't bloomin' care which batters you face. You could have faced Mr. and Mrs. Met and Grimace and got the save, and I'd still be happy about it. Because what kind of fan of, ultimately, this team that should be higher up in their division would I be if I wasn't happy that we'd won a baseball game? This is a fandom so far that's very much been aching to tear each other apart at the throats, despite the fact that right now we're doing pretty good compared to our record last year. Last year we were, I think, 4 games below 500 at this point in the season, and we were like, oh, well, there goes playoffs, and it wasn't even May yet. Today is the 1st of May. We have a positive win-loss record, and, yes, there is some work to do when it comes to getting a bit closer to a wildcard spot, but we shouldn't be panicking yet, not even a little bit. Ultimately, we're 17-14. That gives us an average of 548. We are 4 games back, but we are on a winning 2 streak. I think, the Dodgers have finally got a bit more of their act together. They're 1.5 games clear of San Diego, 2 games clear of San Francisco, and this was all sort of the result we were expecting the division to look like at the start of the year. But, San Diego, San Francisco have both had amazing starts to the year. But, we're the same in terms of the last 10 games. We're 5-5. That's the same as San Francisco. San Diego are 4-6. Like, they've lost more of their last 10 games than they've won, despite the fact they're also on a winning streak of the last 2 games. We've done a lot of favors for a lot of teams in terms of the division matchups so far. Let's not forget, the Mets are leading the NL East right now, and that is including, a Phillies team that most people are expecting to make the playoffs comfortably, and an Atlanta team that made us look like little leaguers at points in the previous series. So we've won a series against the Mets. We didn't just go and avoid the sweep. We won a series, and that's going to be really, really important when you look at the fixtures that are coming up in the Diamondbacks' future. We're now 3 games into that 16-game kind of constant streak, and we've got the Phils, and then we have the Mets again before we face our first divisional matchups with the Dodgers, and then the Giants, and then we go to Colorado, and then we have the Dodgers again. This is going to be a tough stretch, so getting the ball rolling, starting that series with the momentum, especially with, key pieces coming back. Kevin Ginkel's back. Let's not underestimate how important he actually is to the Diamondbacks bullpen. He's got that passion that drives a lot of other guys. And yet, we've lost AJ Puck and Justin Martinez, but all of a sudden we have an elite closer in Shelby Miller, which no one expected. So, yeah, we have things to celebrate. Of course, we shouldn't get complacent. It's, barely a month into the season. But Ketel Marte is back. And, this is a guy, start of this year, people saying, build the Ketel Marte statue. I don't have to tell any of you guys how good Ketel Marte is, but he's back, and he's coming back in Philly, of all places. Home of probably what some would say is his most iconic moment in a Diamondbacks jersey so far, with that iconic walk-off hit to win the Diamondbacks, a crucial game during the NLDS. And, yes, I know that was technically at Chase Field, but he was the MVP of that series. He was the MVP of the Diamondbacks postseason by a very long way. So, yeah, Ketel Marte's back. I don't have to tell you how special that is. If Zach Gallen is finally back to his best, and we've seen glimmers of it this year, but, he was far more consistent. He wasn't worrying me at all the way he had in previous starts today. And you could see that his pitch location was perfect, despite what the umpires were calling balls and calling strikes. If Zach Gallen's back, Corbin Burns is finally hitting his stride, Ketel Marte returns from injury, and we have a reliable, 7, 8, 9 bullpen with Ryan Thompson, Kevin Ginkel, Shelby Miller, and this is without thinking about, the relatively untested likes of Juan Murillo. We don't really know too much about him, but he's there if we need him. Jalen Beeks is also around and has been pretty lights out at times this year. We are in a much better place than we might think we are, and this is without thinking about the other news that's, we haven't seen anything of Jordan Lawler this year. We've got crazy amounts. We've got Kendall Graveman, guy who is a major league reliever who's been on recovery basically since the start of the year, but he's a somewhat of an unknown variable. But could he be, an elite relief guy too? It's only, 15-day IL stint for Justin Martinez. It's going to be a little bit longer for AJ Puck, but he's been pretty solid at times when we needed him. He was absolutely electric latter half of last year, so maybe a bit of a rest will get him back to that. At the end of the day, neither him nor J Mart needs surgery, which, hey, there's a win too. And I know some people say I'm always far too positive on this show, but at the end of the day, and I know I say but at the end of the day a lot, Diamondbacks winning streak, won a series most people expected us to lose today. You should be going home happy. I'm about to go to bed happy because it's, 11 o'clock at night now here in the UK as I'm finishing recording this. Snakes are alive, baby. And, I still think the playoffs are on. That's my closing statements. The defense rests, Your Honor. I'm going to wrap the episode up there. Thank you very much for listening. Please remember to go check out our friends of the podcast over at Moonshot Social in Westfield. And then also the Home Run Travel Company. It's a little late now to book onto the West Coast tour, where I'm going to be going with an amazing group of people to check out a bunch of teams along the West Coast in Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, Seattle, and Anaheim. But if you fancy a little bit of New York, a little bit of Philadelphia, a bit of Boston, and some Baltimore in there while you're at it, Home Run Travel are the people to talk to, especially if you're, like me, getting a little bit sick of the UK weather right now. It can't decide whether it wants to be super hot and super humid or kind of grey, boring, cold, and windy. Home Run Travel will sort you out. They will get you somewhere you want to be, where you'll enjoy the weather a lot more, and there'll be some Major League Baseball for you to watch as well. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Please remember to follow and subscribe and like wherever it is that you're watching /listening to the show. We can also be found on social media at T-Backs Podcast. I am at GB Diamondback over on X, formerly known as Twitter, if we want to be official about it. And we are also on TikTok at T-Backs, where you can check out some of the other baseball-related stuff that I get up to in terms of living a baseball fan's life here in the UK. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.